congratulations to the officers that have been inducted today, and of course to the new members. We started the support to the Lions Club in 2015, and I'm so happy that after my presidency, this club continues to be very active at Pamatasan and Pasig. So I wish everyone the best of luck in for today, I'm going to be discussing access to sustainable development. So I look first. Dr. Randy Max Bulakit, Professor Marlon Maglipas, the President of TRAC, Dr. Echel Antero of the First City Presidential College, where I had the privilege of being there in 2009 with Teachers Helping Teachers to deliver an in-service training for the Department of Education, City of San Jose del Monte in Bulacan. And of course, Dr. Shirley Agrupis, the President and Mercy President of the Mariano Marcos State University, which provided the support to this convention.
This paper is entitled Culture of Peace, a Progressive Filipino Social Character.
Good morning, everyone. Actually, I changed the title. It's not the entire content. I intend to change the title because somehow it's only for Filipino concept. But this time I changed it to more not only focus on the Filipino, but maybe can apply to other culture as well. So my title is Culture of Peace, Redefining the Social Character. My framework here is Eric Fromm. Eric Fromm emphasizes the baseline of his philosophy, and that is humanity. The question Fromm wants to answer is why is it that there is an irrational behavior? Why persons are good or bad or violent or peaceful? This irrationality pushed Fromm to formulate his Marxist theory. He used Marx and Freud. Fromm saw in Marx the key to understand of history and manifestation on, in secular terms, of the radical humanism, which was impressed in the Messianic vision of the Old Testament prophets. The fulfillment of this utopia or dream of having one universal peace, brotherhood, and unity among men The dream, according to Fromm, is found in the philosophy of Marx. Fromm admired also Freud for he discovered the secrets of unconscious, the pathology of the Oedipus complex, the ground of libidinal drives, the character traits which canalize human energy. For Fromm, humanity consists of two parts. The individual consists of conscious and unconscious aspect. The conscious makes him grounded, and that is Marxist, while the unconscious is the world within. Inner core and reciprocal. He blended Freud and Marx and calls it a social character. Culture of peace is a dream of every person, not only by Filipino. The actualization of this culture of peace will redefine social character towards progressive character orientation. But we cannot attain it because we fail to address the root cause, which is the culture of violence, which is a regressive character orientation. I am interested to work on this topic because I am inspired by my father's advocacy and political will to promote peace in a micro level. According to him, conflict settlement was not only about ourselves, nor for people, but generally the whole community. He wanted to change the political paradigm of politics in our small town, but it is very challenging because, according to him, everyone dreamed of this culture of peace, but only in words, not in action. His primary thrust is peace building, moral recovery, and livelihood. For him, the culture of peace can be instituted to every person, and gain of each person must be placed in the fitting context, the sustainable improvement of quality of life for his family, community, and society. In other words, culture of peace needs to be primarily geared toward responding to the peaceful self, peaceful family, peaceful community, and peaceful society, so that it will not compromise stability of future generations to meet their needs and security. Any move to elevate peace will result in culture of peace and become a social character of each and every individual. So this study aims to attain the visionary culture of peace by understanding and addressing first the culture of violence. Then incorporate the culture of love, because for Fromm, love is the answer. Love means care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. The realization of this culture of love will lead us to culture of peace, where the dialogue of life, like religious experience, words, action, and values, and cultural interest is very vital element. Actually, as a background, I live in Mindanao, one of the places in Philippines where you can always watch on TV. There is the Marawi siege, the war in this area, so on and so forth. So I lived in that place for half of my life before I moved to the capital city, which is Manila. And the culture of violence there is, somehow I can say that it's very ordinary every day. But this culture of violence is not focused on that place. This culture of violence is focused everywhere, or it's almost everywhere. And I quote from the UNESCO, since war began in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. Culture of violence is not only the result of war, but it is the result of visible and invisible conflict. So if you talk about violence, you always connote war, but actually it's not, because there is what we call the conflict tree, visible and invisible conflicts that present not only in Mindanao, but not only in other countries, but also in every individual. So, visible conflicts are physical assault, killing, stealing, harassment, war, terrorism, so on and so forth. Okay? So, and the invisible. The visible and invisible conflict are present everywhere, even in each person, in the family, community, and society. And there are 4 levels of conflict that we need to consider, and these are the personal dimensions, which is the interpersonal conflict, the interpersonal dimension, the structural dimension, the cultural religious dimension. Okay, so we need to address first this conflict so that we can elevate or transform to the other parties of cultural peace. Moving forward. So the source of this culture violence can be traced, according to to the primal narcissism of each person. Is always go back to the oral and anal stage, which is by Simon Freud. This person wants to recognize himself an achievement always. His social behavior, he always demanding something for himself, either pleading or commanding. Or he is stuck on the anal stage where he is too much loved with possessions. If the individual stuck in the anal stage, he see the world as possession. He see others also as a possession, also consider others as his possession. And if they do not give things into his demand, it will cause him neurosis. For Fromm, since the impact of the demand of the society is very strong, there will be a chance of either for fixation on oral and anals, or there will be a regression. Instead of moving forward, the individual regress back in time. And according to Fromm, I quote, we cannot repress the awareness of inner or outer reality. That which is repressed can be archaic, irrational, and evil, but it can also be wiser, more rational, and better than which exists in our consciousness. So that is why the psychoanalysis is important in the pathology of society, because for Freud it is possible for psychoanalysis to apply to every individual experiences, and we can consider that the individual is also part of the society. The individual is also making the society, and this is what Fromm calls the social character. Social character here is defined by the society in which the paramount to love, no matter how evil the person is, that this individual drive will be changed by the social character. Family is the psychic agent of the society. If the family affects by the society, this means the society affects the child in the midst of repression. Reaction formations of emotion happens basically depending on the educational process, which is the expression of the overall psychic structure of the society. So it means that the violence sometimes develop in the family, okay, and before in the society. So every person has its own social character structure. And for Fromm, the condition of elevating the free societies go back to the social character structure of the society. Maybe here affects the liminal drive of every person. Society is the unconscious force repress our liminal desire, and Fromm believes that life is always a reward, which every person has his own context and embedded in a certain history of the context of the situation. The basic entity of the social process is the individual, his desire and fears, his passion and reason, his propensities and good and for evil. To understand the dynamic of the social process, we must understand the dynamic of psychological process operating with the individual. Just as to understand the individual, we must see the context of culture which molds him. So that is why cultural violence is present to every individual, because there is the family, the society, the cultural violence is also present. So from the broadening of self-awareness, transcending consciousness, and illuminating despair of social unconsciousness will enable man to experience in himself of all humanity. He will experience the fact that he is a sinner and a saint, a child and an adult, a sane and insane person, a man of the past and one of the future, that he carries within him that which mankind has made and that which it will be. He suggests that as soon as opens oneself to one's unconsciousness, becomes conscious of one's unconscious, thus comes the experience of one's other possibility. Other than the world grows and the humanistic experience that is can be related reasonably and loving to the world and the people, because nothing foreign is any longer really strange to one. And according to Fromm asserts that man in any culture is faced by a gamut of possibilities. He is archaic man, the beast of pride, the cannibal, the idolater, but he is also the being which has capacity for reason, for love, and for justice. Although Fromm discusses human embeddedness, he always pulls back to the commonality which he all shares as humanity. He argues that all men, through different in the consciousness cultural expression, shares the same unconscious striving. Now I move to the second part. There are three parts: the cultural violence. Now I will proceed to the cultural love. In the book of Eric Fromm, The Art of Loving, where he speaks love. According to him, he focused on this mature love is the union under the condition of preserving one's integrity, one's individuality. Love is an active power in man, a power which breaks through the walls, which separates man from his fellow men, which unites him with others. Love makes him overcome the sense of isolation and separateness. Yet, it permits him to be himself, to retain his integrity. In love, the paradox, of course, that two things become one and yet remain two. So here, love is a productive force, yield in the giving, which is an entirely different thing. Giving is the highest expression of potency, which is in the very act of giving I experience my strength, my wealth, my power. Love is an active activity, not only an emotion, not a passive effect. It is a standing in, not or falling for. In the most general way, the active character of love can be described by stating that love is primarily giving, not receiving. It is hardly necessary to stress the fact that ability to love as an act of giving depends on the character development of the person. It presupposes that the attainment of the predominant productive orientation is this orientation that person has overcome dependency from the oral state to the anal state or narcissistic omnipotent, the wish to exploit others or to hoard and has acquired faith in his own human powers, courage to rely on his power in himself, in the attaining of his goal, to the degree of the qualities of lacking in the afraid of giving himself. So, thus, this element of common to all for from love is care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. So the culture of love is the antidote to the culture of violence, because for Fromm, it's very clear in his book that love is the answer. So love is care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. Now, the art of syndrome of attitude which are to be found in a mature person, that is the person who develops his own power productively, who only wants to have that which has worked for, who was given a narcissistic dreams of omniscient and omnipotent, who has acquired ability based on the inner strength which only genuine productivity activity give. And I go to the last part, which is the culture of peace. Now, somehow the culture of violence is the thesis, the culture of love is the antithesis, and this one is the synthesis. So the combination or the antidote is love. No, you can proceed now to the culture of peace. Now, my question here, can peace is attainable and become a culture that can be instituted to every person? Actually, it is very utopian. But according to Hobbes, okay, man has passion and reason. And for him, the most fundamental one among the passion in his preservation, it is the fear of death, especially virus death that moves man to self-preservation. He calls self-preservation as the right of nature, and because man is the continual fear of death, he moves him to the opposite, which is peace. And continue, it is man's reason to discover the way to peace. Peace is a commonwealth of men. Since man by nature is distrustful of his fellow men and one of his fundamental passion is self-preservation, every man naturally tends to put peace as an antidote to war or violence, and this is Hobbes called the commonwealth of men. Now, peace is not merely the absence of war that can be reduced solely to the maintenance of the balance of power between enemies, nor it can be brought about by dictatorship. Instead, it is right to appropriate, called an enterprise of justice. This is an actual picture in Mindanao, where the above figures do not include the cost of foreign investment, loss of destruction of property, and other quantifiable but equally important, the effect of war, the effect of hatred, prejudice, resentment, and discrimination, where everyone need to vacate their house, so they need to go to the basketball court just to be safe. And these are some of pictures, actual pictures, in our place where every time there is a war or conflict, families somehow say to themselves that they are just like chicken. They are just in the street by other people, so on and so forth. So that the effect of this culture of violence is very, very not only present in Mindanao, but of course, in the entire, maybe in the entire world. So that's why you can always watch in TV or that Mindanao is place, but there are places there that it is very peaceful, even though it's in the place of war zones. So now, in the culture of peace, there is the culture of peace can be attained through the genuine dialogue called genuine dialogue. This is not Roman, but I incorporate this in my paper, which is somehow a combination of two and my proposal. So first is dialogue of words, dialogue of life, dialogue of religious experience, dialogue of action, and the dialogue of values and interest. Now these dialogues of words, using words, actually this is the using words of positive in nature, such as star power words like sorry, I love you, you are important, rather than uttering words that down the dignity of one person. In Mindanao, if you say Muslim, if you are using a technical term, somehow Muslim is a terrorist. So that's a degrading term, or Christians are land grabbers. So that's a degrading term. So instead of using that term, use a dialogue of words which is positive or star power words. And these words are those down the degree of the person is an authentic dialogue and can cause violence. The dialogue of life is a dialogue to protect life, such as dialogue between the conflict persons of the group which causes the war. For example, my father in Mindanao, the Rido or the clan wars is very difficult to settle. But at the time of my father, he settled 18 clan wars. And that's very difficult to settle even one war, because he used this dialogue of life. You know, he emphasized that life is important, properties and let are less important, so on and so forth. And the other one's the dialogue of religious experience. He tried to connect or to unite the nomads, the Muslims, the Christians, and every religious in the town. And that is very difficult because Christian wants Christian as the highlight. And of course, Muslims or Islam, they are also the highlight. But he combined it and made dialogue with it and call it the dialogue of religious experience. The dialogue actually is somehow obvious. This is a dialogue that the moment you say something, you must do it. Okay? If you say that we need to face these wars by so on and so forth, so you need to put into actions, not only mere words. So there is a dialogue of action. And the last one is a dialogue of values and cultural interests. Of course, everyone has his own cultural interests, but because of this dialogue and valuing everything, so therefore we can come up with this genuine kind of dialogue. And lastly, I inserted here the words of Martin Buber, which is in the human dialogue, is human dialogue, therefore, although it has its distinctive line in the sign, that is in sound and gesture, can exist without the sign but admittedly not in the objectively comprehensive form. On the other hand, the element of communication, however in words, seems to belong to its essence. But it is the highest moment dialogue reaches out even beyond its boundaries. It is completed outside the context which is the most personal, can be communicated. So the culture of peace can be instituted to every person, become the social character. So the objective here, this is the culture of peace. If we live in peace, that will be the social character, not the culture of violence. And how to address it? So there are some challenges here. So we need to work for justice, of course, effort and understanding the common rules of the conflict, mutual understanding that can lead to unity, transformation in structural violence and institutional oppression, and apply law antidote as an antidote to that violence. To my conclusion, I always use this conclusion in my paper in terms of cultural peace, because the seeds of peace do not lie in ideas, but in human understanding, empathy to ordinary people through love. So this is one of the highlights of the dialogue of action, which is my challenge. The challenge for me is, it's a paper, but what is my part of it? Am I only writing a paper, or am I part
Maybe. I hope so. So, culture of peace can be attained through the culture of love based on the element which consists of care, respect, responsibility, and knowledge as an antidote to culture of violence. Every citizen of the global village must be aware of his responsibility. The greatest responsibility of every person is to see that humanity should be upheld as supreme. Hence, it is necessary to awake conscience of personal, national, and even international level because of this. So, the individual is only a replica of what the ideology of system wants to tell us. Okay? So, if the culture of peace will be the ideology of everyone, so I think that will become the social character. And the social character, there are two, the regress and the progress. So, the regression is more on the culture of violence. The progression is the culture of peace. And in between is the culture of love. And the realization of culture of peace will redefine the social character of this person towards a progressive social orientation. And that's it. Thank you.